So nitty gritty now. We're talking theory. We're talking, concepts. Literal application. I want to do acceleration. I want to get someone way faster. And we're talking and team sport. This is the bread and butter of team sport, acceleration. What are you doing for your acceleration? Right? Like what's your hey, this is going to be my meat and potatoes. What am I looking at? How am I coaching this guy? What exercises are we doing? Are you doing I mean, Randy flat out said it. He goes, I do contrast training with so many guys because like this just works.
Hmm.
What do you think? What's your where's your mind first go for developing acceleration?
It first goes to what is acceleration? We need to, yeah, we can talk about acceleration. What is it? What is that? Like, what do we actually mean by that? Acceleration is very simple. It's moving your center of mass in a direction as fast and as far as possible. So in linear acceleration, it's moving your center mass as fast and as far as you can horizontally, that direction. So that's acceleration. So that's what we need to get better at. How do you do that? There's only one way to do that. You extend the hip. So that's the coordination pattern that's within us. To accelerate, we have to extend our hip. And we have to do that really well. What does that mean? You have to be able to do it with force. You have to do it fast, so with velocity. You have to do it through the required range of motion. You have to be able to control it, and you have to do it over and over and over again. Because very few sports, we only have to do that once. Diving, maybe, there's a couple others, but very few. So that's what I look at. If you want to accelerate well, you have to be really, really good at extending your hip. It means, can you do it with the force, velocity, range, control, and repeatability? Those are the 5 things. And then identify what it is of those 5 that may be limiting you, Mike, and your ability to extend your hip well. Well, you've got the force. That's not an issue. Do you have the velocity? Your velocity could probably be a bit better. What's your range like? And in team sports, often they just can't go through the range. So they just, constrained within that. Young kids don't have the control. They've got the range, but they can't control the hip extension. And often people just are totally inefficient and can't repeat it over and over again. So it gives me a way to try to dial in on the thing that we're trying to actually improve. So that's number one. So are you able to extend your hip well? And then if we're just looking at linear acceleration, there's 2 other things that really matter. Is your torso on top of your thighs? Is there a forward lean of your torso? So can you get your center mass forward so you can get your foot underneath it so you get a good, long, strong push and you don't break? Because without that forward lean, you're bringing the center mass forward. Typically, the foot then will be out in front of the center mass, and there's more braking time on the ground. And which brings us to the third thing, which is the ground. It's the impact of the foot with the ground. Are you strong enough and stiff enough, stable enough on the ground that all the forces that you're able to put into it, you can attenuate them and actually use them to project yourself forward? So what's your hip extension like? What's the velocity of that? What's the force like? Where's the range like? What's the control like? Can you repeat it? Technically, is your torso on top, so is your center mass forward? And are you strong and stiff on the ground so you can handle those forces that you're impacting into the ground? And that's really it. I have this kind of issue with the industry at the minute where everyone thinks that speed is important, and it is. Speed is important. But because now everyone thinking speed is super important in team sport, there's almost this thought that everyone's got to be a sprint expert and biomechanist, and we got to know this, and this about speed and sprinting and technique and biomechanics and blah, blah, blah. You don't. It's just really 3 things. Can you extend your hip well? Can you keep your torso in a position that's appropriate to the direction you're going? And are you strong and stiff on the ground? And then you talk about how you apply those things. So that's the mechanics of it. And then it's okay, how do we get better at those things? And that's dependent upon the thing in which you're limited by. Is it a force issue? And this is why for most young kids, it's force and control. They're not fast because they don't apply high forces and they can't control it. Range isn't an issue. Typically, velocity of the, rotational velocity of the thigh isn't an issue. Repeatability is not an issue. They can run until the cows come home. It's more range and control. Sorry, it's more force and control. So you just get them stronger and give them a little bit more control, and guess what? They will get faster. That's why the relationship between strength and speed when you're young is really, really high. It's also the reason why, as we get older, that gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's no longer a force issue. Everybody can apply similar types of forces, and you've reached a kind of a rate of diminishing returns on the ability to apply force in this way. So it becomes something else. Is it range? Is it control? Is it the velocity? Is it the repeatability of it? So it's that. It's figure out what it is first, and then build that. Now, Randy works with a very specific population, ish. He works with jumpers and sprinters, typically elite ones. Doesn't do a ton of work in team sport, doesn't do a ton of work with, football players or footballers or hockey players or whatever, basketball players. But it is kind of still the same thing. And I would agree with Randy, probably most of the time for most things, complexing things seems to work better for most of the capacities that we're trying to build. So we can from a practical perspective, when you're designing workouts or sessions or ways in which we can improve any of those five capacities: force, velocity, control, range, and repeatability, if we can build them in a complex manner, typically I've had better success that way as well.
Why do you think that is?
Um, well, I think there's a few things in that. One is a potentiation, so just neuromechanical potentiation. I think there's a technical potentiation component within that as well. Like we will do some potentiating work or some hip extension work at a totally different way, but we're still extending. We're still extending the hip, and I feel like, all right, the ability to extend hip is generalizable. You either can do that really well or you can't. So find a bunch of ways you can do it. And then if you can find a bunch of ways to do it, and you're able to do this thing in a bunch of different exercises, your adaptability, your variability within that, just gives you more potential solutions, more potential strategies, more ways to do this. So it gives you a bigger toolbox. So when it comes to, I've seen this before, I know what to do here. I just need to do this. Okay. And if you just do the same thing over and over and over again, when you're just forced outside of that now, which is a pretty narrow bandwidth, I've never seen this. This is different. You've just narrowed the generalizability of this coordination pattern. So just why I always suggest to coaches is find as many different ways to extend the hip as possible, especially if you're working with kids. Like, can you work at high forces, low forces, high velocities, low velocities, big range, short range, big repeatability, short repeatability? Can you get totally out of control? And can you do things that are totally in control? And then you just build this massive toolbox of all of the capacities that are involved in building a better hip extension pattern. So any situation the athlete finds themselves in, they can do it. Yeah, I've done this before, and they just do it. So I feel like that's a big part of it. Is you've got this technical potentiation for the thing as a pattern, and you've got this neuromechanical potentiation that also is happening as well.
You have a product coming out?
How do you know this?
You texted me. But this might be a different one. This might be a different one that we talked about I think like 4 months ago, 5 months ago.
That could be the same one. Yeah, it's coming out in March, I think. So like a couple months.
Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I could. So it's for a long time, everybody who works in sport, where speed is important, where acceleration is important, have kind of two options. You can when because everyone knows that resisted acceleration is a big part of getting better at acceleration. So people run up hills, which is great, and they run with tires, so resistance. If you're old enough, you used to have a freaking parachute. Well, what were we thinking when we were doing that, by the way? I think all three of us has probably done that. You've got sleds. And if you've got if you're in a big university or a big pro team, you probably got a 1080. And you might have a run rocket, if you don't have the money for a 1080. But you've got this $20,000 piece of equipment, which is incredible. The 1080 is amazing. We've got two of them. And then you've got this stuff that's not cost, doesn't cost a lot at all, but doesn't really do much. You know, you can't quantify anything, and it doesn't really give you a consistent resistance, and it tears up your turf and your track and so on and so forth. We know there's got to be something in the middle. And Run Rocket tried to, take that space, but it's just, as anyone who uses the Run Rocket, it's just not a great option. You know, you can't really truly quantify it. You just got a number. It's kind of randomized and it's different every day, and it's big, and it's hard to lug around. So the guys at Kratos, Kratos Fly Fitness, they used to have a partnership with Chris Duffin. They came to us last year, maybe a year and a half ago. Say, hey, I've been working on this resistance acceleration device. Do you mind checking it out and giving us some feedback? I said, yeah. So I checked it out. I said, okay. I don't want to give you just some feedback. I want to be involved in this. Like, I think we can build something incredible out of this. Like, this is going to be game changing. So, fast forward about a year and we're ready to launch this thing in March. So it's this really small portable resistance training device that can go up to about 40 pounds of resistance, up to 100 meters cord. It's very similar to a 1080, but it doesn't give you any of the data that a 1080 does. So it doesn't give that stuff, but it feels like it. Like, it feels, you cannot tell the difference between a resisted acceleration with a 1080 and a resisted acceleration with this. It's called a power cord, AK power cord. So the ALTIS Kratos power cord. So that's what we're coming out with in March. Yeah, it's I'm really looking forward to it. It's a great piece of kit. These guys are incredible designers and mechanical engineers, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to bringing this to the market.
So I had no fucking idea about that one.
Oh, okay, it's something else. Ah, okay, all right. What are you talking about?
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah,
What a great idea.
it's great.
That is awesome. How and you know what's going to be awesome for that too is you're going to be able to, if you even want to, you're going to be able to quantify that with different addition, like different devices added onto the belt or something. You'll be able to build up
100%.
accessories,
100%.
and it's going to be cheap because it's not going to be all in one unit.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So what the heck was I talking about to you then? Well, like, what thing do we have coming up?
So the
Was
team
it the
sport.
activator bands?
No, 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 no.
Activator
So
bands?
this was just another educational product I was discussing with you.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Need for Speed, but for team sports.
Well, Need for Speed is for team sports.
But weren't you doing an updated model?
We're going to do a practical version of it.
Yes.
I'm always rewriting these things because I disagree with myself almost immediately. And I wrote Need for Speed in like the first 4 months of COVID because we otherwise we were gonna, all right, we're out of business if I don't if I don't get something up there quick and sell it, we're totally gone. So I wrote that in 4 months, and it's a behemoth. It's like a big thing. It's pretty good. I'm still pretty proud of the work that I put into that, but it's too big and it needs editing. So I'm editing that and making that a little bit smaller. But also, one of the biggest critiques that people have of our work is, yeah, this is great. It's all this philosophical stuff and it's theoretical and blah blah blah. But what do I do? What do I actually do? And we don't like talking about that. Like, I want you to figure out what to do. Like, here's why you do it. Here's the how you might do things. But you figure out what to do because this is your experience, your subjective experience bias, these athletes that you're working with. You figure that out. But I feel like we have to give them some examples. So our team speed thing now is, like I honestly, I don't know what it's going to be yet. It's um it's this stuff that we've been doing with Leslie Bellman and Danny Foley, and we brought Meg Young on board. We're doing some cool things together in the team speed space that will become a thing. I don't know what that thing will be. Thing. And it'll be primarily video based, where most or much of our stuff is text based. And that's harder and harder to move now. Like, people want video, people want short and stuff that entertains their eyes rather than, oh man, you're asking me to read a 200,000 word document. That's a hard ask, right? So yeah, this will be more video.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So yeah, stay tuned.
but it doesn't have, I think the advertisements need to be short and concise, but I don't think the actual information, like, I think you can be as verbose as you want with this. I don't think you need to worry about cutting it down, because if there's one thing we learned about our podcasts, like we go on, like our Randy podcasts are 3 hours long.
Jesus, really? Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's Randy.
But,
Yeah, you should
but
have seen. I think I've told you about this. Like with
yeah,
our Randy Sue course, and thanks for all you guys do to help promote that. I really appreciate it. It's blown up. Like it's done really, really well. Man, that was Andreas put that together based upon maybe a dozen conversations with Randy. And so you
40
can,
hours of footage.
yeah, 40 hours of footage. 40. Because Randy can, I love Randy, but man, can he talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like a 3 hour podcast with Randy, yeah, that's a short one.
Yeah. But like, dude, they, people love it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even think, like, you'll edit it just to keep tasks, just to keep it on task sort of thing, like, and all the points together. But bro, I don't even, if I were you, I wouldn't worry about keeping it short, because it, even a conversation like this, and as long as this is over an hour and a half long, people listen to the whole thing and they're going to love it. You know what I mean? Like all the nitty gritty details, what it takes for you, what your thought process is in getting to that, rather than doing like the, clean cut A to Z sort of thing. Like you can go through the alphabet on video, but people just like the video too. They'll read along with it. You'll get the text and do everything.
There's a couple things in that. First, I appreciate you saying that. Second, COVID allowed the opportunity for a ton of people to get into the education space.
Yeah.
So going into COVID, we were kind of the only game in town. Like it was just us. And then coming out, you've got a bunch of people selling a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And most of it is fancier than ours. It looks better, it's like it grabs your attention. There's a bunch of stuff to it. Most of it's trash, but many people don't know that. So we had there's a time, and this is a long time, where I thought, do we need to change how we do things to update into this kind of newish world? Or do we need to just double down on what we do and just do that better? And I think I think you know where I'm going. Like I ended up just, all right, we're just going to do that better. We're just going to be better than you.
Yeah.
We're not going to jump into this bloody ocean with you and just mess about and fight it out with, trying to get people's attention. We're just going to build better stuff. And if you don't like the stuff, that's okay. It's not for everybody. If it's too much for you, that's okay. It's not for everybody. If it takes you too long, well, we're not talking to you. That's okay. So it really helped us identify what was important to us. And that's high quality content. Like we want to build high quality stuff. But second, and this is kind of what I was speaking to, is you have to respect the time of the people that engage with your stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to. You can't just assume that, all right, man, it's Randy, it's Stu, and all right, I got 3 hours to listen to Stu waffle on. Like most people don't. I have to respect your time better than that. I need to come to the point a little bit better. I need to be a better editor of stuff. So I don't give you a 200,000 word document that's going to get you better. If I can do that in 100,000 words, that's more respectful of me. So that's what I try to do. I try to make things as short as I possibly can while still trying to get across all of the relevant stuff.
And
I
yeah, I'm with that. Brooker, what'd you just say?
I I understand, but also if I think back to when I was young, maybe I would have also wanted the 200,000 words because I just wanted to hear everything you had to say. And what
Yeah.
you think might not be that great and cut out, it might be the right message for the right person at the right time.
Mate, there's so much in that too. I appreciate you saying that. Like that's I look back to late 90s and the super training forum.
Oh, yeah.
And man, I would like everything that Sif would say. I was, or what some of these other guys were saying. Like I would read everything, everything. And I didn't care whether he was talking about, just his day or whatever. Like I wanted to read everything. And it's the same with Dan, like I recorded a lot of the conversations I had with Dan, or writing them down. And I would just go back and just listen and read those over and over and over again. So you're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. And but I absolutely appreciate your respect and the amount of work that you put in and the thought that you put in into editing every little detail. What you did with the re-engineering Sue was phenomenal.
Mm.
It was phenomenal. Answered a lot of questions as quickly as possible. It was great, respecting the time. But there's also, I mean, you got someone like me where I don't just learn one thing. I learn everything about that person. Right?
Mhm.
I might have dude, I might have listened to over 100 hours of Dan's stuff, and like before there was 100 hours of stuff,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? So like it to learn, I think there's a lot of people that really want to dive real deep into how that person thinks because it helps them figure out where they are and how they can get to that path as well. I think there's a huge component to that you guys you can offer, bro. I mean, so think about it like this, like you're around some of the greatest coaches ever, some of the greatest athletes ever, and you've been doing it forever. And what does that make you? You know what I mean? Like, so you went from the athlete to the mentee to the associate coach, the you know what I mean? Like not just an assistant coach, but like you're side by side. And now it's like, who are you? So like any little thing, people would love that entire process. You can literally do education about everything that you have done and it will get consumed. I'm telling you, bro. It sounds ridiculous to say or it sounds ridiculous to hear, but like it's super valuable. There is a coach on every single level that wants to hear what you have to say, and they're going to hear it differently, right? And we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. That's for damn sure.
Mm.
So like you saying the same thing that you said 10 years ago doesn't mean you wasted your breath, right? Like it still needs to be heard.
Oh, there's no question. Yeah, I agree. I agree totally with that. And I also agree with like I probably put more stuff out. I was gonna say I probably put more stuff out than I should, but I don't know if I agree with it. I see my role as because I've got a certain amount of experience now and I have a certain network and I know a lot of different people. And if I'm confused by things, I can send it out to the network and try to better understand it. I see my role as making sense of a bunch of complex things and then sharing it in a way that makes sense to me and then hopefully makes sense to people who read it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Harold Jarsch is this Canadian military systems thinker guy, and he works a lot in business. And he has this framework called the Seek, Sense, Share framework. It's how we make sense of the world. We seek out information, we make sense of it, and then we share it. And we could share it in conversation. We could share it as coaches with the athletes we work with, or we could share it with a community of coaches, which is kind of what I do, right? So I seek out stuff. It could be new stuff, it could be old stuff, it could be just stuff that interests me. Because most of the stuff that I'm seeking is stuff that is helping me with my problems or helping me in things that I'm interested in. I try to make sense of that and then I share it. And by sharing it, means that I make better sense of it because now I'm getting feedback. And this is the big thing that I learned from Jason Ross back in the late 90s. And when I started, not late 90s, sorry, the late 2000s. And then when I started my McMillan Speed account, like, man, that was everything to me. Like I'm nobody without that. I'm nobody without sending that stuff out into the community and getting feedback from people who read it. So I get what you're saying. I really appreciate that. But I feel like that is kind of the job of educators or people in the space. Like that's kind of what you guys are doing, right? Like you're seeking out interesting people, hopefully interesting people. You're having conversations to help, make sense of your world, their world, and you're sharing it to a community of coaches. And it's such an important role. And that's what I really enjoy about our responsibility in this community. As I said before, we're a coach education company now. Without that, we're nothing. We don't have a job. We don't have a company. We're a coach education company. And I come to the point now in my own development as a coach where I almost prefer that than coaching. I still love coaching because most of the things that I educate on are, again, I said the problems that I see and I'm experiencing my own career. And that's the stuff. All right, let me try and make sense of this and share it with other people. Maybe they're seeing the same problems or having the same problems. But the educating piece now is as important to me as the actual coaching piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my dean at acupuncture school, he had said to me, the first 10 years of being an acupuncturist is you're sitting there and you're learning someone else's techniques. Then you're spending the next 10 years making sense of those techniques and trying to figure some things out for yourself, but refining that and perfecting that and then like adding your little twist to it. And the third 10 years, like you really spend refining what it is that you do and who you are. Then the fourth 10 years, you teach.
Mm.
So it's like you gotta crawl through these trenches first, and it's all step by step by step by step. And then like, I mean, bro, you're at a great teaching point. You spent all these years learning, learning from the mentors, learning what they're doing and how to put your twist on it. We make sense in this corner years. You know what I mean? Like it's like doing all my shit. Like this is who I am. And hey, now it's time for me to teach. So like your path is super, super, super valuable to share all that knowledge of. Like
I,
that's
I think that, yeah, I think the path is similar for all. I mean, I feel like there's very few people that can just be happy doing the same thing for 50 years.
yeah,
You can do similar things, but it has the why you do it needs to expand and
yeah,
change. So the way I tell that story is that the first 10 years of my career was very selfish. It was all about me. I'm trying to become as smart as I possibly can. I'm trying to learn as much about this thing as I possibly can. It's all about me. Yeah, I'm coaching a bunch of athletes to do things, and it's important that they do well, but that's almost secondary for me or to me being better, you know? And the second part, like the second decade, was now more about the athletes. All right, can I now apply all of this stuff that I have to help these athletes with their thing? And that became primary. Me becoming smarter, me learning is still important, but it was secondary to the athletes actually performing well. And then the third became now, can I teach this stuff to a community of coaches that are interested in that? And that becomes primary. And maybe secondary now is the athletes and how the athletes are doing. I'm tertiary to that is still, I still want to learn stuff. And I'm still selfish and I still got an ego and I still want to know stuff. But it's in service now of athletes doing well and educating a community of people. And I'm kind of hitting now a fourth decade where, yeah, that's still important to me. And how the athletes do is still important to me. And me learning stuff is still important to me. But I'm 55. And I'm starting now to become or relate more to people who are about similar to me, 45 to 65 years old, and what they are going through in life, getting older, starting to feel a certain way. And maybe some of the lessons that I can take from all of this other stuff, we can now apply to a population of people that don't necessarily work in sport. They're not necessarily athletes. Maybe they're former athletes, maybe they're coaches, maybe they're whatever. But I feel like now where I didn't used to be able to relate to the general population, quote unquote, I can now significantly, way more than ever. Where, okay, what I do now and the lessons I've learned and the things that I do, how can I apply these to an aging population like me? Because now that is a problem for me. All right, I want to be healthy. What does that mean? I got to do stuff. I got to do these things. All right, what is that? And then can I make sense of that and share it to other people that may be having similar problems? So I feel like that's kind of the arc for me anyway. As I said, I feel like if you're just coaching and that's the only thing that's interesting to you, it's just coaching elite athletes for 5 decades or 4 decades, man, I'd kill myself.
well,
Well, it's a shame that you want to keep, there's probably a direct correlation between the amount of stuff you ship out and how quickly you turn around and say, wow, I was an idiot back then.
Yeah.
It's a shame that you want to keep it's a shame you want to keep being curious and shipping stuff out because you could have been an old man in a pub in Bradford talking about when you were 24 years old, you knew everything, and everyone's only just catching up with you now.
Mate, I should have done that. You're right. You're right. I could be in Bradford right now having a curry and a
Yeah.
pint, curry and a pint, talking about the good old days. Ah, mate, is it too late?
You can always go back, buddy. You
I
can
can
always
go back.
go.
I can go back. That's a really good point. I'll see you in Bradford next week.
Bro, thank you. With that, like, let's end this. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and your time and all you do for us. Like, this was great. From the bottom of my heart, man, it was awesome to have you on. It was great to connect. And me and Brooker will definitely be out there at some point, probably this year, hopefully.
Yeah, would love that.
Absolutely. Love it. It's appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on. It's really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah,
The
thank you.
best, too. Thank you,
All right,
man.
fellas.
Thank you, buddy.